Fear is an emotion and it's uncomfortable, and we all have it. It's a protective mechanism that our brains developed back when we were cavemen. And if we had something that was frightening and that we should be afraid of, it's likely because it was going to kill us. So it activated that fight or flight or sympathetic response in our body. And so what that means is that our bodies would get tense. We would be very kind of tunnel vision focused on escaping whatever it was that was causing us fear so that we could either fight and, fist fight literally, or we could flight so we could run away. And so that sympathetic response, it kind of constricts the blood vessels, it increases the pressure, it decreases our digestion, it tenses up our muscles. And usually, after you either fight or flight, your body gets to relax and release all that stress. But now that we live in the modern world, we still have that mechanism lying deep inside of all of us. And we experience fear, sometimes on a regular basis, which activates that sympathetic response. However, we don't have that release like we used to when the tiger kind of wandered off after we played dead or we fought back and killed our opponent who was trying to steal dinner from us. That stress just keeps going. And so that's actually a physical stress on the body. And your parasympathetics don't get to kind of kick in and, kind of relax your muscles, let your digestion start and continue, kind of let that cortisol drain away so that your body can go back to normal rest and digest function. And so usually there's a balance between the two, but a lot of times in our modern world, we find ourselves having stress at home, at work, with our families in conflict, even the positive stresses we put on our body, like when we exercise, when we push ourselves beyond our comfort zone, that causes a stress to our body as well as our mind. So, the interesting part is that our mind doesn't know the difference between that primitive type stress where a bear or someone else is chasing you. And a funny story, I used to joke that I would only run if a bear was chasing me. That's not true anymore. I actually like running now, but before I used to not because I had asthma growing up and it was hard to breathe when I ran. And luckily, I can do it a lot better now without that much difficulty breathing. But it's true. Some people don't run unless they're being chased for good reason. And so your body responds as if you're going to be chased when it feels fear. And that can be a very uncomfortable feeling physically in your body. So, a lot of times when you feel fear, whether it's walking into a meeting with your boss, it's trying something new for the first time, and there's that fear of the unknown and not knowing what to expect. It's fear of a new job or being fired or trying a new sport or activity or even going skydiving. Your body will just kind of get into that fight or flight response and your body will feel fear. And what that usually feels like, a lot of us don't stop to actually see what it physically feels like in our body and experience it, but it's usually the heart will start kind of pounding or racing, your muscles and everything will tense up, and you just feel kind of tense overall. And if you don't take the time to notice that it's there, a lot of times we'll either resist that physical feeling and be like, man, why am I so tight? I just need to relax. And then we go, drink a beer or a glass of wine, or we go work out and we don't address the underlying emotion and it kind of stays. So if we're resisting our emotions or avoiding them or doing things like eating or drinking or shopping, or watching TV or scrolling Instagram for hours at a time, in order to resist or distract from that uncomfortable emotion of fear, then we're not actually dissipating that response in our body. So we're staying tense, and that can cause problems with our muscles. It can cause things like chronic headaches or jaw pain, digestive issues. And it kind of feeds into that worry and anxiety and that physical feeling of stress. And there's ways that you can process through your feelings, physical emotions, and the emotional component that kind of help you release that and process it through, and then your body will relax. And that helps prevent disease and chronic pain, that kind of thing in the long term. And then there's an emotional component where if you're resisting the emotion and pushing against it, it just keeps coming back and it gets more and more intense. And so every time you feel fear, if you're not acknowledging it and allowing it and realizing it's a normal part of being human is that we're going to feel fear when we're doing something that is new to us or that's uncertain, the outcome's uncertain, or we're just plain scared of doing it, like walking on a high, like a ledge or something when you're hiking and you know you could fall to your death. It's appropriate to have some level of fear because it helps you be more cautious and stay focused. Or if you're feeling fear because you're about to go skydiving for the first time, that's normal. It's a normal human behavior. If we're not allowing that fear and we're pushing against it or resisting it, then it tends to keep coming back more and more intensely, and that can manifest in physical symptoms and also emotional and mental stress. And then you may not even know why it's there. So every time you're in an uncomfortable situation and you push against that fear and you don't acknowledge it, or you're like, a lot of us are afraid to acknowledge these uncomfortable emotions because they're uncomfortable. And that actually intensifies the emotion versus addressing it and allowing it and processing through it and then being able to release it. Okay. So fear is one of the most primal, intense, and uncomfortable emotions that we can feel. And a lot of times we put ourselves in situations where we want to feel some fear or we know that there's like a likelihood that we could have some fear. Like for me, when I was young, I did gymnastics, and every time there was a competition, I would get so nervous and I had fear and I was afraid of messing up, of forgetting my routine, of falling in front of everybody who was watching, my parents and the other parents and spectators and my coaches. And I had to push through that fear and do the performance and do the routine anyway. And I feel like that helped me kind of build some resilience, but at the time I didn't know what I was doing. So even babies who are learning to walk, they may have some primal fear because they're doing something new and then they fall down and they get up again. And it's by practice and this repetition, when you know how to do it in a healthy way, it helps build that muscle of resilience. And that's part of what I teach my clients as far as stress resilience and curing their stress and knowing that when stress comes up, they have their own back and they have that confidence to know that they can deal with any type of stress that they find occurring in their life because they have these skills and these tools to work through it. And it no longer will paralyze you or drain you or make you feel so tired that you can't function in a rational manner or you become overwhelmed by the emotion. And so fear is, like I said, it's primal, it's really intense. Um, it's just an emotion. And part of what I love doing with my clients is learning how to process through the emotion in both the physical and mental realms. And it's so powerful when you learn how to do this. And it's something that you never unlearn. So it's a skill that you'll have for the rest of your life. And it comes in handy in so many situations. Even when you're having a tense conversation with your spouse or your family or your friends, you can kind of stop for a second, check in, and be like, okay, what am I feeling? What's this intense emotion? Is it appropriate? Is it helping me? Is it holding me back? And you know how to process through it to keep going to get to that desired result that you want. So with gymnastics, it was I wanted to get through my routine and finish it and do well. And so I had to learn to allow that fear to be present both mentally and physically, but not let it distract me to the point where I couldn't go through with what I had planned to do. And sometimes you can process through emotions and release them before you move forward in more comfort. Other times you learn to let the emotion be there and still continue on your way and know that it's going to happen and you don't have to be paralyzed by it. Because a lot of times, especially when we're trying new things, we feel fear and we let it stop us or hold us back. And just know that that's a normal human emotion anytime you're trying something new. And if you always let fear hold you back or you don't actually pause and kind of open yourself up to it and question it and say, is it appropriate for me to be feeling fear right now? Or do I want to take this time and just kind of be curious about it and say, why am I feeling this fear? Is it just because it's something new? Okay, well, then I know that and I can keep moving forward on my trajectory. Or am I feeling fear because there's something that could physically or emotionally harm me? And do I want to take stock and maybe step back and evaluate what I'm doing and see if I want to go in a different direction. So, our emotions can be very powerful tools when we are able to acknowledge them and use them for good and not evil. And I like the superhero analogy in that I teach my clients, especially, how to harness your emotions so they're like your secret superpower. And especially with our negative or uncomfortable emotions, we can totally use those to grow and expand and become the most badass version of who we are in the world. And it's so cool and it's so much fun. So, I want to, before I open it up to coaching, I just want to invite you that if you're determined to cure your stress and move through it or past it and get to where you want to be in your life, or you're even curious about how to reduce your stress and eliminate it, I have the cure for stress and I'm happy to share it with you. So I want to invite you to contact me and let's set up a call. And it's a free exploration call to see how you can eliminate the stress in your life to live the best life that you want to have. And some of the benefits of moving through and past your stress is that you'll have more connected and loving relationships. You'll get better sleep. You'll enjoy sex more, and you'll probably have it more often if you're less stressed. Because if you're anything like me, you don't feel like having sex or being intimate or even really talking to people in depth when you're overwhelmed with your stress and your emotion and you're tired and you're exhausted. So, eliminating your stress also increases your productivity. You're more likely to enjoy your work and get further. You can get promoted faster. You can make better and more powerful decisions for yourself and for those things that are most important in your life because you're not distracted or held back by your stress.